You are listening to www.integralnaked.org.
One of the truly great discoveries of the modern West, the modern postmodern West, has been stages, what we call zone 2 stages in the upper left quadrant. Now, what that means is basically it's the kind of stages you find when you look at Clare Graves or spiral dynamics or Piaget or Kohlberg or Gilligan or Jenny Wade or any of these, Bill Torbert, Suzanne Cook-Reuter, Jane Lovenger, and so on. These kinds of stages, Jane Lovenger, spiral dynamics, you can find in no contemplative texts anywhere in the world. You won't find them in any of the sutras, tantras. You won't find them in St. John and Teresa and so on. They have stages, but they're phenomenal stages you can see by looking within your mind. But you will not find the kinds of stages that come from the kind of research that these Western geniuses pioneered. And that's why you can sit on your meditation mat for 20 years and you will never see something that says, this is a moral stage 2 thought. This is a moral stage 3 thought. This is an orange thought. This is a blue thought, and so on. So the reason you can't do that is these kinds of stages that were pioneered are the kinds of stages responding to specific questions, problems, conflicts, and it's what people have in common when they go through these. So you can't look in your mind and see what everybody has in common as they move through this. You can only see what you have. So the great traditions present, sometimes they have stages, but they're stages of states. And so gross, subtle, causal states. And when you train, states, generally speaking, states of consciousness, don't come in stages. Natural states don't. Dream states, getting stoned, any sort of emotional states, they don't unfold in stages. That's just the nature of a state is like a thunderstorm. It comes, it's there it is, and there it goes. But trained states tend to unfold in stages. And these are the stages that you find in most of the contemplative texts. And they generally go from gross to subtle to causal, emptiness to non-dual. So that big mind is an example of non-dual state. So you can be introduced to that state right now. Now let's look at the other ones, which we'll just call stages, even though technically they're what we call structure stages. It's kind of stuff that Lovenger and them they look at the structures that they unfolded. So we'll just call the one states, meaning states of consciousness, and the others we'll call stages. So the downside of that is you can study spiral dynamics for 20 years and you'll never have a satori. Because these don't necessarily move you through these, but they do show you that they're there. So if you are doing big mind or you're doing meditation, and let's say that you really are, or you spiral dynamics again, you really are at blue, and I say, let me now talk to the turquoise mind. It's not going to happen. It's not there. 5 years to develop these things. These are complex tasks that would be very like if I said in the same process, if we're doing big mind, any kind of meditation, big mind is by far one of the most effective pointing out instructions. So we're very, very fortunate to have Genpo and Diane, John Kessler, and several others working with us on that. But if you're doing big mind process and I say, let me talk to the concert pianist, not going to happen. Let me talk to the brain surgeon, not going to happen. Let me talk to turquoise, it's not going to happen. So that's point one. That's meditation won't get you these stages. So you can be at red or blue or orange. You can be at blue and do big mind process. And you will get big mind, and you will get non-dual, and you'll be introduced to those states, and you're still at blue. Interesting. So that's point number one about why we want to use these two things together. Now there's a third thing that you won't get from either of those two. You won't get it from spiral dynamics, and you won't get it from meditation or big mind. And that is the shadow. the real shadow. The real shadow is something you're not conscious of. And most people say, shadow, yes, I know I have some aggression I'm not in touch with. No, if you're conscious of it, that's not it. It really is the unconscious. In Awakenings with Robert De Niro, who's coming out of, he's been in this coma basically, and it was the first time that they used dopamine to bring him forth. And he was a little bit cranky at one of the, he's just come out of a coma he's been in for 10 years, whatever it was. And he's really kind of a little bit belligerent. And one of the psychiatrists says, well, we have a lot of unconscious hostility, don't we? And he says, if it's unconscious, how would I know? That's right. So what happens with the 3-2-1 process, and you get more and more of it as the week goes on, is these three things we want. We want meditation, which is states. We want stages, and we want shadow. Those are the three S's. And there's not a single discipline anywhere that has those three. It's the first time we've really put them together in a way that's very, very effective. And so this is one of the reasons that to the extent that you want to increase healthy translation, this is one of the most effective ways to do so. And if you want to get into transformation, this is one of the most effective ways to do so. So the 3-2-1 process is, as you'll see, if you have a monster in the dream. Now, there are several ways to handle it. So there's the monster, and you feel fear. So you wake up and you go, I'm Vajrayana student. I'm advanced. I can handle this. I'm in touch with my fear. I won't hide it. I'm going to feel my fear now. I'm being very experiential, I'm not going to intellect or anything, so I'm going to just I'm so afraid, I'm so afraid. And then, if you're doing transmutation of emotions, then you can transmute this emotion into its corresponding wisdom. So that can be, depending on the various types of things, fear can open into an openness. Fear can open into an equal equanimity type of wisdom. So as you really get into the fear, and it's true, if you get into the fear, you can get into its corresponding wisdom. Unfortunately, the fear is an inauthentic emotion. It's a fraudulent emotion. Because what happens is the monster is your projected shadow. So what we do before you get in touch with inauthentic emotions and extend them to infinity and call that spirit, we say, wait a minute, let's have you identify with the monster. Let's see what that's all about. And so you'll see, you go through the 3-2-1 process. You'll start and you face the monster, then you talk to it, and then you be it. So now you're actually identified with the monster. And the first thing that might come up there is, I'm going to kill you. You're speaking as the monster now. Now we're getting somewhere. You are in touch with a murderous rage. That's an authentic emotion that you had projected. So not fear, but rage is what you're not in touch with. We already established you're in touch with fear. I'm afraid. That's not what you want to do. So now you're in touch with rage, and now you can transmute it. Now you can practice Vipassana on it. And you have an authentic emotion that will convert into an authentic wisdom. But otherwise, you're building it on a false foundation. And it actually dissociates the emotion that you're not getting in touch with. And the same with Vipassana, or any witnessing awareness. I'm now fear, there is more fear arising, there's a whole lot of fear arising. Fear. So now you're in touch with fear. But that looks at it as an object and not as the subject. That's the problem. So you're actually dissociating. Every time you go fear, you're going dissociation, and you're cementing a dissociation from a fundamental aspect of yourself. And that's why so many of these otherwise wonderful traditions, the shadow follows you all the way up to enlightenment. And if you're not going to handle that on the relative side of the street, you are going to get slammed with it all the way up and down. And then when you get this enlightened blast that would let you transcend the relative body-mind, which you have done, the relative body-mind is arising in emptiness, and you're no longer identified with that. Nonetheless, in the relative body-mind, there's a dissociation of rage. So now you come back, all enlightened, And which doesn't mean enlightenment leaves everything exactly the way it finds it. The mirror mind leaves everything exactly the way it finds it. It doesn't change anything. If it changed something, it would mean going from a place where spirit is not to a place where you think spirit is. The enlightened mind is the mirror mind. It leaves everything just as it is, including your dissociation of rage. So now you come back, dissociated and happy about it. And now you are turned loose on the world, and, excuse my French, you're a dickhead. And that's what tends to happen if you don't take care of the shadow. So what we're working on is these three things. One is, whatever stage you're at is okay. You can be at red or blue or orange or green or yellow or turquoise or indigo. We've decided that that's okay in that sense. You have a right to be wherever you are. In any event, you are wherever you are. So if you're at blue or at orange, fine, that's where you start. And let's say that you are at blue and you start doing trained meditative states, including big mind, including any altered state that's bigger than your stage. And when that happens, there's a micro disidentification with that stage. And it will help you move to orange more quickly. So that's the positive aspect of what meditation can do in that sense. But we take you where we find you. So that's working with stages and introducing states. And then at any of those components, you want to work with the shadow. Because that will really, really catch you. So those three things together, we can create sort of a whole psychograph. And it doesn't, again, the point is not just to get into turquoise or something. I mean, if that happens, wonderful. But you can't define success by getting to the next higher level. Because if you're a turquoise, then I'm going to say, why aren't you at indigo? You're a rotten failure if you're not moving up. 90% of what you have to do is healthy translation. And a good definition of healthy translation is you give equal emphasis to all four quadrants at whatever level you're at. So you give an equal emphasis to I and to you and to it. And if you give too much emphasis to one, to the I, you're narcissistic at whatever stage. If you give too much emphasis to the occupational hazard of males. If you give too much emphasis to you, then you are in a state of fusion. You're lost in the other, occupational hazard of females. And if you give too much emphasis to it, then that's sort of a dissociated, not being in touch with interiors at all. So you want to start with a healthy translation at whatever stage you're at. And that means being aware of the quadrants, incorporating them to the extent that you can. Secondarily, get in touch with the shadow at whatever stage you're at. And then third, practice state training. Because state training, first of all, does two very important things. The gross, subtle, and causal, and I'll just use those three states, meaning sort of all of them. Those are authentic states of being. They are the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya and the Dharmakaya. And even an infant has Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya, even if they're at beige. So it might seem to say, if I'm at blue, oh, how depressing. I'm not going to get to know God until I'm up here. That's not true. You can know Dharmakaya right now. And it's authentic. Just like big mind, you can know it right now. But when you come out of that, you will interpret it and function at blue. You will have this background understanding, but you will still be functioning at blue. What will happen is it will help you move more quickly to the stages. So we want to combine all three of those, among other things. But a combination of all three of those gives you a most balanced way to find both, if you will, vertical health and horizontal health. Both of those are very important. And it also means don't worry about how many stages you have to go. You can get in touch with authentic Dharmakaya right now. You can get in touch with the God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit right now. And then that can be the foundation of whatever growth will occur.